Tony, welcome. You're the Green Party candidate for the Cambridge constituency, but what does the Green Party actually represent in its various policies, from Home Affairs onwards? Let's start with Home Affairs. What are you going to make as a difference in Home Affairs?
Well, I think some people, when they hear about the Green Party and the idea of voting Green, they think it's an environmental party, but there couldn't be anything less true in the modern age in terms of how the Green Party has evolved into a group of people who have policies and views right across the board in health, education, home affairs, foreign affairs and everything else. When it comes to Home Affairs, one of the things that we would like to take a close look at is the whole policy of sanctuary and the extent to which people in this country are welcomed when they're seeking political persecution from other countries. And we've had a hysterical discussion in this nation in recent years about so-called asylum seekers. And I think one of the things that we would like to do, if we have MPs in Parliament, is to be changing the culture of how we receive people fleeing persecution who are seeking sanctuary in other countries. And one of the things we would like to do is to end detention, particularly detention of children, and to be looking at ways in which people who are waiting the verdict in terms of their asylum application in this country to be better treated. And you know, one of the terrible things that happened close to here in the last week is someone dying at the Oakington detention centre because they weren't being properly cared for in terms of their health. So this is a big issue, and one of the things that I think the Green Party could help put onto the agenda in the next Parliament in a way which is not being reflected by the other parties.
What about foreign affairs? Where does the Green Party see itself taking the UK in terms of the challenges facing it in terms of foreign affairs?
I think one of the things that we would like to see is a shift in the emphasis that we have at the moment on global competition in terms of how we conduct international affairs, to be looking towards more global cooperation. And one of the things that I think we do need to be looking at in the future is how we can be supporting countries in making the transition to a more socially just and climate-friendly world. The reality is that on this small planet, 9 billion people are not going to be able to live as presently 1 billion Europeans and North Americans do. And I think we do need to be fostering a different conversation at the international level through the climate negotiations, through the United Nations and everywhere else. We have the most incredible foreign service in the United Kingdom. Our diplomatic service is second to none. And I think we should be using it to open a different kind of dialogue about future cooperation and moving away from this idea that countries competing for diminishing natural resources, competing to gain market access, is going to be any kind of model that is fit for the 21st century. We'd also look at using our aid programme more wisely to be focused much more on poverty reduction and perhaps less on macroeconomic management, as is presently done through our contributions to the World Bank, for example. And we'd be looking to increase our overseas development assistance to the kind of level seen in Denmark and Sweden, true leading countries in the world stage, and I think Britain should be there with them.
You mentioned market access and finances, etc. How is the Green Party going to deal with the extremes of the financial crisis that the UK is finding itself in right now?
I think the economic conversation obviously is extremely complex, but if you boil it down, there's really two schools of thought that are on the table. One is about making cuts quickly in the public expenditure and possibly making tax cuts alongside that. The other school of thought says that what we need to do is to invest in economic recovery by maintaining public spending and stimulating different bits of the economy through government intervention and backed by government finance. I'm definitely in the second category. I do believe that if we cut too quickly, especially in public services, we could finish up having a double-dip recession. Cuts in public services inevitably will be putting people out of work. That will lead to people going onto benefits, we'll lose tax revenues, we will lose money circulating in the local economy, and that could lead to a worse recession. So I'm definitely of the school that says we need to maintain public spending and look at the tax system as the way of doing that, but also ways in which the government can work with the private sector to increase investment in things like renewable energy. Those kinds of industries are the industries of the future, and if we invest in them now, not only can we achieve an economic recovery, but also be helping to meet mid-century carbon reduction targets, which at the moment, you know, we're showing little prospect of achieving. So I think for us it's about taking a joined up view of this. And also, you know, some people say that, you know, the crisis in the economy has been caused by too much government spending. That's not really true. It's been caused by a banking crisis, and the other thing that we need to do is to regulate the financial sector properly so that we don't have this kind of excess risk-taking in the future. And one of the specific policies we'd have to help with that would be a Tobin tax, which would be charging a small transaction on international financial exchanges in order to raise potentially tens of billions of pounds, which we could be investing both in cutting the deficit and also in building a sustainable economy.
I'm sure that many people would agree with many of the policies that you talk about. But isn't the Green Party facing an issue that it's often seen as a single issue party? How do you break away from that?
The way we're succeeding in convincing people that we have policies right across the board is by talking about all those policies, and the conversations we're having on the doorstep and in the media, I think, are conveying quite correctly the broad view that the Green Party takes. I have to say, however, that some of the other parties, they have tried to steal our clothes, as it were, by coming forward with what they call green policies, but actually what in the end are quite shallow environmental policies. And it's been good that the main parties have in recent years tried to adopt the kind of clothing worn by the Green Party, but actually you just pull off the cloak and underneath it's business as usual. And the Green Party, its agenda goes much deeper, because the environmental crisis is only one aspect of the kind of challenges you need to navigate in the years ahead. And I think the Green Party brings an integrated, holistic approach to politics, which is about joining up social well-being, economic recovery, with some really huge, pressing and quite urgent environmental challenges. So the environment remains at the core of what we're about, but we can't solve the environmental crisis until we have a more equal society and an economy fit for purpose, both in achieving human well-being and meeting environmental goals. So that's the big difference between us and some of the others. The Liberal Democrats lately have been going around saying they're, the big Green Party rather than the small Green Party. I have to say that, my experience of working on different issues over many years has revealed a big gap between the rhetoric and the delivery when it comes to Liberal Democrat environmental ambitions. And I remember working on the campaign to stop the Newbury bypass being built, and the Liberal Democrat MP there defending a 6-lane motorway being built through nature reserves and across some of the most pristine habitats in West Berkshire. I remember working in Cumbria to promote a wind farm on the side of a hill next to the M6. It wasn't a particularly beautiful countryside, but the Liberal Democrat European parliamentarian was campaigning against that. I remember the huge controversy about fuel taxes a few years ago, one of the necessary tools we have to bring about a low-carbon society, and Liberal Democrat activists in this part of the country bouncing around with their placards outside petrol stations calling for petrol to be cheaper. So they say a lot of things, but when it comes to delivery, often there's a bit of a gap. And I think that's the other big difference between us and them in terms of the policy, because actually we are serious about this.
You may be the party candidate. What makes you tick? What drives you? What passions do you have?
I've spent the last 25 years campaigning for a more socially just and sustainable society, and I spent much of that time working at Friends of the Earth, and was for a period there the director of the Friends of the Earth group in this country, and was the vice chair of the Friends of the Earth International Network, which is a coalition of 70 organisations across the globe. And we achieved some incredible things during that time, and the most recent achievement that I helped to contribute to as director of Friends of the Earth here was the passage of the 2008 Climate Change Act. This was a huge achievement. I felt at that time that it was time for me to seek out some new challenges, and I looked around at what still needed fixing in making this transition to this better world that we have to embrace in the 21st century. And even though I'd seen huge successes from our friends at Greenpeace, ourselves at Friends of the Earth, and with Oxfam and Amnesty International, it struck me that that voice of all of those causes is still absent in Parliament. And so I decided that I'd stand for the Green Party, the only party that I could line up and say this actually fits my principles. So here I am in my hometown. I've lived here for 20 years, I know Cambridge very well, and my ambition would be not only to take these issues to the national parliament, but also to put Cambridge on the global map as the place where sustainable living is becoming reality.
Tony, Tony, thank you very much for that, and good luck on May the 6th.
Pleasure, thank you.